to welcome you all to today's leadership lecture series, where we are honored to have a visionary leader in the field of artificial intelligence grace our stage. Today, we are privileged to have with us a distinguished individual who is shaping the AI industry in India and beyond. Dr. Aravind Srinivas, the founder and CEO of Perplexity. Now, I will invite Mr. Kaviraj Nair, CEO, Office of Institutional Advancement, to introduce our guest.
Good evening, everyone. Welcome to this evening's leadership lecture series where Aravind will be talking to us about his journey so far. So, for the sake of formality and all of that, Aravind is not a stranger to any of you, but let me introduce his and read out his profile. Aravind Srinivas is the founder and CEO of Perplexity, a company that seeks to build an AI-native search that directly answers your questions rather than provide you links. Since its launch in December 2022, Perplexity has grown to serving 500 million queries in 2023 and 10 million monthly users, and has raised 100 million in funding from the likes of Jeff Bezos, Jeff Dean, Ian McLecan, Nat Friedman, and top venture firms like Bessemer Ventures, IVP, NEA, et al. Aravind got his BTech and MTech from IIT Madras in computer science and a PhD from UC Berkeley, and has worked as a researcher in OpenAI, Google Brain, and DeepMind, publishing research papers on supervised and reinforcement learning. So we look forward to a very interesting and exciting session this evening. And welcome Aravind to do the honors. Yeah.
Can you hear me? Okay. Thank you everybody for coming here. And always it's all great to be back. I'm actually back to India after 5 years. So it feels really good to come back to IIT and give a talk. And I bumped into my professor here, Professor Ravindran, and he was like, okay, so came here, why don't you give a talk? And I'm like, okay, sure, and then that's how this happened. So I'll be talking about my company, Perplexity, just kind of how it came together and some lessons that, I've generally learned over this period and I feel could be useful to some of you here. So for those of you who don't know Perplexity, I feel like this video would communicate to you what we are trying to do. So right now, this is the current incumbent, right? You ask something, let's say you're just looking for headphones. Instead of just getting the, something that you really want, you're actually filled with more clutter. You're not sure exactly which one to click on. You're going to scroll, spend some time seeing things, and you're still more confused than when you started off with. Instead, we built this product where it just tries to cut through the noise and gets exactly what you wanted, clear answer to your question, and with references. So for example, a query like this, you don't even know exactly what is the best, but you still want to know what is the best. So ideally, you want an AI where you just say, hey, best headphones, and then it should come back and ask you clarifying questions. It should ask you, okay, what's your budget? Because you don't have to specify it beforehand. The AI should work for you. And then it should say what's your primary reason for using it, and get more input from you, help you expand what you originally wanted in your head, but you didn't translate it well to an actual search query, and just give you the answer precisely based on high quality sources on the internet. That's ultimately what search should do for you. And the current incumbent does not have any incentives to do that because they make money of you clicking on all of these links. But what you really want is to just get to the answer, right? And that's what we are trying to build. And this particular user, on Twitter said this very well. How to best think about Perplexity is like Wikipedia and ChatGPT having a baby, but the data is coming from the whole of internet, not just from Wikipedia. Now, Wikipedia is something all of us have learned a lot from, right? It's like an amazing tool, especially you can even say it's a nerd's paradise. So it'll be great if we can recreate something like Wikipedia, but not in a static version for everybody. That is, It's not like one version for all of you. Depending on the level of depth you want or the breadth you want, you can personalize what you get. And for that, you actually need an AI to do that for you. And today we have the right tool for that, and that's Perplexity. So our mission here is to build the best conversational answer engine. And I call it answer instead of search engine because, right, you don't need to type in keywords anymore. You can talk to it like how you would talk to your friend. Let's say you're before an exam, you're preparing for something. You're not going to your friend and asking like a topic, right? You're actually asking, hey, about this particular thing, how does this work? You can actually now start talking to computers like that and get knowledge at demand. And we want to scale this for all people, like build the infrastructure needed to serve millions of people, and over time, hopefully 1 billion. Today, we already serve millions of people. And by doing this, like we want to make sure that we can grow sustainably. So build a business and generate revenue through both the platform and the infrastructure, and take all that money and reinvest into making the AI better and better. Because we want the product to keep getting better for every individual user as more people use the product. And AI can do that because as it gets more data, it just keeps getting smarter. Now, how did we arrive to where we are today? It's very nonlinear. So if you want the answer already, it's like we kind of built something that we wanted first, and we found it very useful, and we saw that people around us started finding it useful, and therefore like we put it out and everybody started using it. And I strongly believe in this. A lot of people start companies and they try to think for an end user, end customer. That's one way of building a company. It's certainly like, nothing to criticize about that. It's worked out for many people. But I personally believe that unless you care, that is, you, the founder, or the group of founders really care about that particular problem, it's very hard to build something truly unique and new. Because if you don't put in the energy, and in the beginning when you're nobody or nobody knows about you, the only person who cares the most about your product is yourself. So if you don't really want to build it well, then it's not going to end up well. And we were not working on a search engine company in the beginning at all. In fact, like if you go and pitch to a venture capitalist that you want to build a Google competitor, they would not even give you like, any money. They'd be happy to give you a lot of money for an idea that might never work, but feels very safe. Like say you're saying, I'm going to build an AI co-pilot for a particular narrow profession, knowledge worker. It feels very risk adjusted for them that they would put in a lot more money. But if you go and say, I'm going to build this AI native search engine, they'll be like, no, that's too competitive. There's just one monopoly here. So obviously we were not that ambitious either to start with. So we started working on a very simple idea of like natural language to SQL. SQL is basically structured query language that you would write to query over spreadsheets, like your Google Sheets or like a bunch of tables. And we were working on this as a way to search over databases. And instead of building a tool where it's just like a SQL editor and like you're trying to write SQL, our passion for search flowed into the product that we were kind of viewing it as search. And we saw, okay, what if the internet was just organized as tables and we could just power search over that? Kind of like imagine if Google Maps was a table, or Twitter was a table, or LinkedIn was a social graph organized in the form of tables, and we could just power search over that. So we were like kind of, your passion draws you to the ideal convergence point. So we were working on search. And then while building the startup, we had like very little idea of how to do most of these things. Like for example, Johnny's my co-founder, and he's asking about vector databases, KNN search. These are all like machine learning concepts, or like SOQL is one type of SQL. And here, I'm asking some commands about servers and Ruby and Bash commands and things like that. This was like, way before ChatGPT. And we just wanted a tool where we could ask all these questions because we were completely inexperienced in building products or building startups. So we built this tool for ourselves to be just more productive. And then we realized that if you just have a chatbot, with has no search grounding and is only answering based on what the language model has already learned, it's going to hallucinate. It's going to tell incorrect things. And it's uncontrollable hallucination where you cannot even verify if it hallucinated or not. So we had this, and this is me asking questions about like health insurance. And why did this come up? Because we got our first engineer and he came and asked us, hey, I need health insurance. Okay, like I don't know anything about health insurance, and I can't like bother my investors to ask about all this. So, and Google doesn't tell me anything about these kind of questions because insurance is a very highly paid AdWord category that they have no incentive to actually give you answers to any of these. So we built this tool, we had this tool, and it was very useful. So then we said, okay, why don't we ground it with the web and prevent hallucination, at least like not completely prevent, but reduce it dramatically. And then we realized like it could answer questions about what's going on in the world. Like for example, that was the time Elon Musk was completing his Twitter purchase. So we asked questions about like, has Elon completed his Twitter purchase? And then we made it conversational. So one person could start asking a question, another person could become curious about that, and then ask a follow-up question. So then search for the first time became like a conversational experience and a group learning experience. So we definitely knew we were onto something new. It was obviously a side project, right? A tool that was meant to be useful for us to build something else. But that tool itself started becoming the main part of the story. So we were pretty motivated by our own usage of the tool, because you could track how many queries were being done per week, and I could see it increasing. So we had this idea, okay, let's put out a Discord server and invite a few friends, and see if they take the tool seriously. When you're initially doing a startup and you ask friends to try out your product that's in beta, most of the people don't try. They're like, hey, very cool, and then they don't even open the link you sent. So then, some fraction of the people do come and try, and they try one or two queries and they just leave off, and and then the final fraction is going to actually be using it, and you can look at how they use it. So what we realized is whoever was excited about it were using it pretty frequently during the week. And some of them were like, this is way better than Google for me because I can just get the answer. Okay, there was a point when Meta stock was dropping and someone could clearly understand what was going on much better than reading 5 or 6 news pages. And this was beginning of November 2022. And then obviously the biggest change in AI in recent history, OpenAI launches ChatGPT end of November, and dispels the myth that you need to be a Discord server and a Discord bot for AI products. Because before ChatGPT, the wisdom was Midjourney is the most successful AI product, and it was a Discord bot, so we had to have Discord bots. And that was the wrong idea. Nobody wanted their search queries to be seen by others, so nobody wants their prompts to be seen in a public Discord server. So these are all kind of obvious lessons in hindsight, but at that time it was not clear. So when ChatGPT came out and was huge, we got the courage to launch something right after. And we also knew we were pretty differentiated because we always used the web to give the answer, and we always gave the sources, and we were more like an answer engine, like a search experience compared to a chatbot. So we launched exactly a week after. And at that time, it was literally just daisy chaining GPT 3.5 and Bing together, because that's what you should do as a scrappy startup. We had 1 or 2 million in funding. So your job is not to really worry about whether you own the building blocks, but just put the product out and see if it even has takers, and scale the usage, and then raise enough funding to go build the building blocks yourself. So we put it out, and to our surprise, a lot of people liked it. They were pretty excited about it, and the search traffic was sustaining. It was not just 1 or 2 days of traffic. During the winter holidays in December, we could see sustained traffic. And then we got the courage to make it conversational. We didn't copy ChatGPT and said, okay, we'll just use the chat UI and have a chatbot instead of a search interface. We said, okay, what is the whole point of having a chat in the search use case? You would only ask a follow-up question. That's what is a chat here, and you would only want to ask a follow-up if either the first answer was not your expectations, and you want to iterate, or you want to ask something related to the first question that you initially did not even want to ask, but you just suddenly got curious. And then for the second thing, we want to prompt you to ask like the right questions, like just like how you see suggested questions in Google, but we want to keep these suggested questions in the context of the answer in the past query. And that was like one of the biggest reasons why people started engaging with our product more. It's all like very non-trivial decisions. Why would you do this? But people started clicking on these. And that gave us the idea that most people did not even want to ask a question. They just wanted to be told what question to ask. So that's why we built Copilot. The whole point was remove the burden of prompt engineering. You don't expect people to be amazing prompt engineers. Help them start with something ambiguous, and you tell them what to pick over time, like to make their prompts more detailed and more precise so that they get exactly what they want. And this is guided by the product principle that the user is never wrong. So don't blame the user for writing a bad prompt. Blame yourself that you didn't design the product in a way where they were guided towards the right prompt. So that's why we built Copilot. And and all these why does Perplexity have this unique user interface for putting sources at the top and giving you sources? It actually really comes from my academic background, my co-founders' academic background. Citations are a very big thing in academia. It's sort of like your currency here. Everyone feels proud if their paper gets cited by other people, and especially if it gets cited by people they respect, then they feel very good about it. And so in our user interface, even though we give the answer, we do show the user exactly like where the answer is coming from at a granular level. Every sentence has a corresponding citation. And when you're writing a research paper, one of the most important things you always keep in mind is you're not supposed to write any sentence in the paper for which you cannot have a corresponding peer-reviewed article as a citation. Either the experimental result or someone else's paper should be able to back up what you write in any part of the paper. That's what makes the writing very rigorous, and you learn this exercise over writing many papers in your PhD or undergrad research. And so this was something that stuck with me very, very well. And we thought, okay, what if we could bring this foundational principle when you're writing research papers as a core principle baked into an AI chatbot? So TLDR, don't say anything you cannot back up with facts. Another profession that uses this very rigorously is journalism, right? They cannot write something that, unless it's an opinion piece, if it's an actual story, they cannot write something that they cannot cite. They need to have their sources for everything. So then this was actually our first prompt. Write an accurate, concise answer using only the web search results. You must only use the information from the provided search results. Use unbiased and journalistic tone. Today's date, blah, blah, blah. Combine the search results into a coherent answer. And then cite the search results using this bracket dollar index. This is exactly how you write academic papers. If those of you are in AI or machine learning, this is a NeurIPS citation format. And then you just use this as a prompt and tell the model to do this, and it just does it. That's thanks to great AI progress. And we were able to take advantage of that. And using this, we launched the first version of Perplexity. Now it feels so slow. When I look at this video is actually sped up. When we first launched, a friendly investor told me, you should not have it as a you should have this not as a query button, you should have it as a submit button, because it's almost feels like you're launching a job on a cluster and the result takes forever to come. It was that slow when we launched it. And now we are widely appreciated, and people wonder, why are we so fast when other products like ChatGPT or Bard are much slower? So that's what you should really consider. You don't have to be perfect when you first put it out. With several iterations, you can eventually get there. And there is always a lot of tendency, and Bill Gates has spoken about this, to overestimate the short term, underestimate the long term. Like when you first launch something like this, where there's like a lot of bugs and errors, like many queries go wrong, there's a tendency to think like this is not going to work. Like these are all the things people told us when we started. This whole answer as the primary thing is not going to work. You should have the 10 blue links, and you should put the answer as a summary at the top. It's a step in the opposite direction. It doesn't truly understand anything. It just regurgitates what's already there, except it makes mistakes. It's more expensive per query. How are we ever going to scale this to billions of queries per day? What's the business model if you cannot put ads per link? Why would a startup work on this? It's meant for like Microsoft or if Google decides to do this. This will obviously get killed. Nobody's going to fund this. It's search instead of microseconds, it's macroseconds. So these are all the things people said, and except you still need to have conviction. Okay, if these language models keep improving, and if your search index also keeps improving, most of the mistakes are going to decline exponentially, and the cost of hardware is going to come down. These models are going to get more efficient. So the cost of serving all these will go down too. And if it gives people back their time, if they don't have to do as much searching anymore, people's time is fundamentally valuable, so you can monetize that because you're giving them back. And so obviously, why would a startup work on this? Because incumbents are going to find it more difficult to work on this because they have to disrupt what they already have to be able to do this. So we knew all of these from a first principles perspective. We knew that we were doing something right, even though the rest of the world did not get it. And that's usually a good position to be in. So nevertheless, it has to be said, if you want to change something that's so prominent and default, it's definitely going to be painful, it's going to be hard, and you have to be irrational to start a venture-backed company to do this. Even now, it might be irrational, right? Like we have not completely made it yet, but this is just going, trying to make it very clear that it's not meant for the rational thinker to do like a startup. It's most likely going to fail, right? And a common pattern in every successful entrepreneur is that you kind of underestimate what it takes to do something. You think you can do it because like you thought it was easy, but not because it's actually easy. And then you realize it's so hard, but you've already gone so far along that you don't want to give up anymore. So you just continue to do it. And the other thing is like, why would you decide to do the hard thing then if it's going to be painful? Because 99% most startups fail. And so you at least want, okay, the 1% chance that I'm going to be successful, I want it to be insanely great. Like I want the outcome to be really massive, so that the expected value is high, right? So it's like 0.01 times something really high plus 0.99 times something really negative. So you want at least the expected value to be like pretty positive. So that's why like you want to aim for big bold bets and deeply internalize the power law of nature, right? Take bold bets. So what is the power law of nature? Basically, this is the graph, right? It's kind of, let me give you some examples, because let's say if you're doing a task, 80% of the effort is spent, 80% of the task is done with the first 20% of the effort. Like say you're trying to write an email. If you write the first paragraph, if you already know what is the, who's the recipient, right? Write the rough outline. Most of the work is already done. But the rest of the work is actually what takes you more time, the edits and like trying to make sure your tone is right and like you want to get the message across, but be diplomatic, all these kind of things. That takes more effort, right? So this is the power law of nature, where like majority of the work is done with the minority of the time. Or if you have a team of 10 people, 80% of the work is done by 2 people. And the rest of the 8 people do the rest of the 20% of the work. It's very hard to like have a very uniform distributed allocation here. This is just how the world somehow ends up working all the time. And you can exploit it. You don't have to complain it. You can actually exploit the power law really well if you make peace with it and internalize it a lot. And same thing applies for shipping a product. You don't need to have all the possible features ready to ship it. For example, we ship Perplexity without having most of the building blocks ourselves. So you just need to have the sweet spot, the readiness, and then it's ready to launch and you're ready to go. And after that, you can fix the long tail. Same thing. The product is just has to be accurate on 80% of the queries. It can be wrong on 20% of the queries to start with, but that's the long tail that you want to address over time. That's why the company exists. And validation of ideas and the resources you need to have to see if an idea works or not. Or startups and valuation. If you take all the startups in the world and the cumulative valuation of all the startups, majority of this valuation is dominated by the few startups that exist. Majority of the market, if you take the public markets and add the market cap of all, most of the value is going to be generated by the first 10 or 20 companies like Apple or Google or Microsoft. And this is kind of called outliers, where majority of your returns are coming from few good decisions you made in your life. And that applies to startups too. That applies to almost everything you do, in your life. There are few things that made a tremendous amount of difference, and those are the outlier events. And your job is sort of try to make more such events happen, right? Which is kind of fighting the Pareto optimality here, but you're trying to somehow understand and keep identifying these 80-20s everywhere. So this is one of the most important lessons to learn in a startup. Never try to aim for perfection. Don't try to be like Steve Jobs, always trying to in fact, that's a negative image that has been painted of him. In fact, the first iPhone was not perfect. It did not have the App Store. It was not perfectly priced. It was launched to the market, right? So there is a tendency that you have to be so good to be able to do something. I just want to say that that's not true. You just need to be just enough, but keep iterating. And why work on something really hard? It's a lot easier to attract really talented people to come work with you if you're working on something hard and challenging. Otherwise, they don't feel like it's worth their time, They would be better off chasing these moonshot projects that they get access to at a larger company. So this is really something that is counterintuitive, right? You would think someone is willing to take a risk bet on a startup is already pretty risky. So you want to make sure you're minimizing their risk by working on an idea that feels very easy and achievable. But the reality is you're not going to get the best people to work with you then, because they don't think it's worth their time. And therefore you have to work on hard and challenging things. It's similar, for example, professors, they attract the best students to work with them if they can. There's this word called nerd sniping. You give them such a hard problem that they just can't stop thinking about it, and then those students all want to work with that professor. So that sort of applies to startups too. And what happens is that even though the original problem is so hard, when talented people are all working together on hard problems, you often make a lot of progress. Maybe the first problem you wanted to solve is never, solved, but you somehow end up moving the needle. You solve a lot of intermediate problems, and those intermediate problems, solving them ends up being valuable to the world, and you end up moving the needle and creating a lot of economic value that way. And so how do you decide what those things to do are? Look for a few things that you know to be true, but the rest of the world doesn't agree with you, right? Being contrarian and also being right. You don't want to just be contrarian. You don't want to be this person in the room that is always disagreeing with what the rest of the people say, just because it's cool to be that way. Because then people don't like you. You're just they don't want to hang out with you. So you want to be contrarian, but also you want to be right, because that is what signal over noise. So when we were working on Perplexity, we always asked our users. It's very important to talk to them. And these are the kind of things they would tell us.
It truly has been revolutionary in how I do my work. It has saved me so much time and energy, and I have personally gotten so much use out of it, both as a student and a teacher, because the nature of what I'm doing is I'm taking my own classes, but I'm also teaching classes, and it's so helpful. So I wish that there was you could have literacy classes, how to use it in good ways, how to use it in helpful, productive ways where you're still learning, you're still getting a good experience, but you're not having it do all the work for you.
I don't know how long I've been using it for, maybe a couple months. Probably longer than that, I'd say. I wish I could go back and like see the first thread that I had, but I feel like I'm just now reaching the point where mentally I'm like, okay, Perplexity, like instead of going for Google, you know. But the biggest thing I think that it had like kind of has replaced is like the Google's and like a lot of other search engines, like their results are just like so, I don't know, like SEO oriented, I guess. Like, and they're like for a lot of topics, they're just like not very friendly at all.
Sorry, they said the volume is not enough, but so some reason it's not. Okay. Yeah, I'll try to just play one more.
I would say that Perplexity is definitely getting to the point of like replacing other like, you know, like I don't go to Google to like look for something very often anymore.
Like I literally say it's what Google and ChatGPT should have been or should be. I just tell them it's like completely. I tell people like completely replace Google and ChatGPT.
So when people are like saying all this, so even though like there's a lot of skepticism, you know that you're actually working on the right things, and that keeps you going. So when you're when you're doubtful, like always look for those little signs of evidence that what you're doing is right. And if you clearly know that to be true, then just don't worry about what the rest of the people are saying, right? There is value to listening to the rest of the world too. So, I don't want to give you this impression to just ignore whatever everybody else says. Just keep doing whatever your heart says. That's not what is right either. But if you do have evidence that what you're doing is right, then definitely ignore what the other people are saying. And the last thing I want to say is like the Steve Jobs thing, right? Like it's not verbatim his code, but dots connect in hindsight and like believe in the journey. This famous speech at Stanford. That's really true, and I kind of believe in that a lot. Like this is one of my favorite movies that had a lot of influence on me. It's not a very popular movie, so you can buy it on YouTube and watch it. It's called Pirates of Silicon Valley. It has the story of Bill Gates and Steve Jobs and how they built like Microsoft and Apple, but shows a parallel story at the same time because they competed with each other. And I saw this movie when I was in campus here. Someone in the campus told me about it, and I read these two books. People joke about these two books as propaganda books for Google. It doesn't matter. Like it has a very positive effect on a lot of people, how Google works and in the Plex. And these books had a lot of impact on me. Even it's not because of reading these books that we are working on a search engine. It's just that when you're a researcher, you often think like it's not your job to start a company. Companies are meant for these MBA type of people, or like people are like constantly building new products and like not doing research. So Google is one of the companies that truly changed that dynamic, where the founders of Google were PhD students at Stanford, and they had an idea called PageRank, and they converted it into like a $1 trillion company. Obviously, many more things on top of that, but that was the seed of the company. And when I read the foreword by Larry Page, the Google founder and CEO at the time, you can read the first paragraph. He just said, if he were to think about his future, either he wanted to be a professor or start a company. Either option would give him a lot of autonomy, the freedom to think from first principles, real world physics, than having to accept prevailing wisdom. And it's really true. Like both these professions are truly, entrepreneurial in spirit, different ways of going about it. But both of them, you kind of have to take bets. You kind of have to hire really talented people. In a professor's case, you hire really talented students. In a company, you want to hire really talented people, employees. And, professors have to raise funding, companies have to raise funding, and you want to be able to make great things happen, right? And that spirit definitely is impacted me a lot. When I was in PhD, I really thought, okay, you either had to start a company or be a professor, and like I kind of didn't want to be a professor, so I thought company was the only way forward. And so I was definitely, when I was in DeepMind doing my internship, I used to ask people there, fun lunch or dinner conversations were always like, what is the page rank of 2019? And we were always talking about GPTs, transformers. There's always, skepticism around whether it was really going to take this form that it exists today. Because that was still the age where it was just GPT-2. Most people do not believe in all of this. So, but definitely there was, clear that transformers was a special thing. And so I spent a lot of time working on that. And so this is kind of how like my trajectory was. When I was here in IITM, I did a lot of AI research in DeepRL with Professor Ravindran here. And this was all like, not because it was cool at the time, actually. This was, at that time, probably he was the only professor here in maybe in whole India working on AI or machine learning, or deep learning. Nobody else was even available. So it just happened that it was very interesting, and there were like a bunch of people very excited about it at the same time. And so we worked on these ideas like much before most people. Now it's like, oh, it's a hot thing and everybody wants to work on these topics, but that time it was pretty unpopular. And same thing when I went to Berkeley, RL became popular because of AlphaGo, and then AlphaZero and all that, DeepMind. So I was like, what is actually like new? Because in PhD, you're supposed to identify some things that other people are not really deeply looking into, and identified the area that, okay, RL is going to be sample inefficient. It's not going to work on its own. You need to be able to take ideas from somewhere else and make it more efficient. So I looked at generative models at the time. Now it's called generative AI. At that time, it was not called generative AI. It was much less popular. And there were plenty of startup ideas at the time, like working on compression. I mean, I'll admit it was very much like based on watching this TV show, Silicon Valley. Oh, like you can use generative models for compression, generative models for search. All these ideas were there, but none of them materialized into a company. That's again something I want to highlight is you can have a lot of startup ideas, but it takes a ton of energy to like actually start a company and get things rolling. Like that energy in the beginning, that is the founder energy. And I definitely did not have it during PhD. Then I started the startup in 2022 with the simple idea that you just productize LLMs. There was no like concrete plan, stumbled upon this idea. So everything was kind of like unfashionable, but somehow like the dots connect, like, my reading of these books or like watching all these movies or like all these ideas that I had before, somehow it all comes together. So if there's anything you take away is like, don't always look for success in every outcome you're doing in your life, right? There are many research projects that failed for me here. In fact, the first project I did here in IIT Madras in research failed. First project at Berkeley failed. Like it's a lot of like research projects fail. And the first startup idea we started with was searching over databases that failed, but somehow we ended up stumbling on a much better idea. So what matters more is like you willing to just keep going through the journey and not really just trying to knock it out of the park at every single thing you do. And the sequel thing also ended up helping us, by the way. We put it out just in case people were excited about it by saying, okay, we scrape all of Twitter and like power a search over that. And that's what made like the world notice Perplexity. Because Jack Dorsey, the actual founder and CEO of Twitter at the time, before Elon took over, tweeted about it, and that got us like 100,000 people on our site at once. Our site crashed. Whole world came to know about us, and then we built the infrastructure to scale to so many users at once, right? So somehow things will work out in hindsight. Just believe in the Steve Jobs thing, and try to aim for doing things you're like likely to be much better at than other people. This is something I realized very late. And good way, and obviously you can ask like, how do I know what they are? And one heuristic is like whatever comes much easier to you, but not so much to people around you. It's not going to be too many things. Obviously, if it's too many things, you're superhuman. So it's going to be a few things, and you pick that and like just strengthen your strengths even more. It could be that you're much better at programming, you're much better at presenting things, you're much better at storytelling, anything like, whatever things you think like you're so much more natural at than others, you're likely to, you probably want to be strengthening that even more. And as for like companies, like, work with folks you can respect and trust. It's very important. And you obviously know your weaknesses and strengths. Don't try to like impose your opinions on things that you're not an expert at, even though like you might be the founder. And invest a ton of your energy. Like let's say a great founder told me this recently, that he used to spend 30% of the time, 30% of his work hours in a week just recruiting people, because it mattered so much. And so that's something that you got to really focus on, recruiting great people. And I guess with that, I'll end my presentation. Thank you. Yeah, I'll repeat it. So the question was, what was the experience raising capital, and like how many times have you been said no? To be very honest, I was not said no ever, but that was also because of my profile at the time, that I had PhD and like worked at OpenAI, Google, and all these companies. So the investment was not a no, but the amount definitely was lower in the beginning, right? Like I only was able to raise 1 or 2 million to start with, not like tens of millions, like how most other people start many companies with. So that was definitely, it's all relative, right? Like, okay, you might say 1 or 2 million is great compared to no money, but at that time, I thought what we raised was pretty minimal.
So as you said, like while building initially, you should just do bare minimum to put the product out, right? So like, weren't you being asked questions like, what is the technological moat that you have? Why can't others come and build the same thing? So how do you answer that?
Yeah, so moat is something that everybody keeps asking. But if moat is something that you can build in like 2 months, then that shouldn't be a moat, right? Then somebody else can also do it in 2 months. Moats take like years to build, or even decade. So I usually just don't worry about that. I think it's not very important. It's also like the only moat you have as an early stage startup is the raw energy you have to just keep going week after week after week and keep making improvements. And the speed and the velocity, the speed and like the risk-seeking attitude you have, that is your moat, because that is what other people cannot replicate. Like the bigger companies don't have that. They have to move slowly. They have to have a room of 10 people and try and achieve consensus. These are the kind of things you can skip. So that's your moat. And hopefully you can use all that to get to a point where you do have a technological moat in like maybe a 2 to 3, 4 years time frame. But you shouldn't be aiming for that right away.
Makes sense. Thank you.
Hi, thank you for the talk. It was great to hear you talk about Perplexity. My first question was on how does Perplexity take care of like net neutrality? So like if I search for 5 places to go and there's 5 lists by my friend and by me, what does Perplexity choose and why does it prefer one over the other? Like what is Perplexity's page rank?
Yeah, so that's a good question. So the way we think about this is there are obviously like some whatever the LLM thinks is worth citing, we want to respect that. So we want to respect the judgment of the LLM, and we also say, okay, that's part of the prompt. Like make sure you use authoritative sources, relevant content, and then you can ask like, what if somebody SEO bombs all this? That's where we can use the authority of the domain itself and filter a lot of things. This is never going to be a perfect solution, right? Because it's going to be millions of queries and we could always be wrong on few things and great on others. But the idea is that at a aggregate level, we can be pretty unbiased because we don't have an incentive to rank anything above or below, since we're not getting paid by any of these domains for doing that.
That answers it. Thank you.
Hi. What is the meaning of this logo? First one.
Oh, the logo.
The second thing is,
okay.
What is your business model considering the fact that you're not going to get paid by advertisers?
Okay, great. So the logo is the center cursor, like cursor is sort of like the cursor when you're typing in a query, and the Rolodex is sort of inspired by the rolling index. We feel like as people keep querying the product more, our index keeps getting better. So it's a rolling index and it's a center cursor. So that's sort of how the logo came together, and it's very distinct, from other companies. As for what is the business model, today we are monetizing through subscriptions. So if you have a pro plan, and like you can upgrade to the pro plan if you want like a better quality AI model, more features like uploading images, uploading files, unlimited uses of the Copilot, which is the interactive search experience, and also like more support from us in terms of customer support and things like that. And over time, we plan to have a lot more value add through the pro plan.
So I wanted to ask, like, okay, we saw that you did a lot of your masters and your PhD, I think, right? Yeah, PhD, and I think your thing in AI. How did you get to saying that, okay, fine, I want to research in AI? Like, what was the journey? What was the roadmap there? What led you to that? Because I'm assuming like at that time it wasn't that popular, right? It wasn't as hot as it is right now. So how did you get to that point?
I mean, I had a good professor. He was pretty exciting, and so yeah, we took his machine learning class. It used to be very hard to get into the class, and I think Professor Ravindran, Professor Ravind, I mean, yeah, so everybody tried to get into the class, and his exams were super hard. So obviously when you find a challenge, you want to take it, right? So it was just for the challenge. I mean, like, why would you write JEE? It's not, you don't actually know what you even want to do in your life, right? It's just very challenging. So you just do it for the challenge, and similar to that, and
so my question is, how will you deal with copyright issues? Like, for example, you definitely will take data from the internet, from some random website, and the traffic will be reduced from that website if a person who need to visit from Google search.
So the question is, how do you deal with copyright and drive traffic to the content publishers? The way we are thinking about it is we are at least attributing every part of the answer. Where are we getting it from? In terms of inline citations as well as the source panel at the top. We are definitely not going to have as much traffic to the outgoing links as Google, but the traffic is a lot more directed. Like, we only drive traffic to the source that really matters to the actual answer, whatever the user really wants to click on. So that way the value of the traffic becomes higher, but the volume of the traffic becomes lower. So in terms of the product, value times volume, we hope that it at least remains the same.
Yeah, so first of all, great presentation. So my first question is, how did your time in the Department of Electrical Engineering affect your current pursuit in AI? Like, do you feel it helped you?
Yeah, I think it helped me, because one thing I do remember distinctly is there was a professor who was head of department at the time, Professor Hari. He taught us a Python programming class. This was my second year, and like most of my computer science friends were just writing code in C++. And because he taught us a Python, in fact, it was not just Python, it was NumPy and Matplotlib and SciPy, all of those things. I picked up all those libraries very fast, like broadcasting, slicing, all these basic stuff that ends up being so valuable in deep learning, right? Nobody knew at the time. So when we actually did the machine learning course after that, I could just do all these assignments like 10x faster than the CS people, because they would be writing for loops for everything. Because they would write code in Python like how they write code in C++, except you don't need to, and like that's a skill, right? And the other thing is in EE, like you're basically like learning all these like signals and systems, linear algebra, probability, like a lot faster, like earlier on in the curriculum that you just get you just internalize it a lot more. And when you're reading ML, like it comes more naturally to you. Same thing, like we had a course on control systems, which is basically a flip of RL. Instead of reward, it's like cost. And all that helps you much more. You just are able to move much faster than the CS people.
Great. So apart from your curriculum, was there something that you did that you felt significantly pushed you into this field?
Into AI?
Yeah.
Just the ML. Yeah, actually mostly. I do remember doing a contest, an ML contest that was also conducted by some friend at CS department. That was actually before I took the ML class. They said there's this contest, there's this library called scikit-learn. Just take it and like try a bunch of random algorithms and try to win the contest. And it was perfect trial and error. I had no idea, just importing different library, decision trees and random forests, tweaking the hyperparameters until I got the number 1 on the leaderboard. But turns out that's exactly how ML works, right? So that really helped me too. That experience was surreal when I first did it.
Thanks.
Hello. So,
hey.
So when you decided to step into the world of startups, you took care of the tech, you took care of AI. Who took care of the business side of it?
We didn't have a business, right? Like when we started, we just had to launch a product. In fact, I wouldn't say I alone took care of the AI. Like we have a CTO and like he took care of it more than me. I took care more of the business actually in the beginning. If by business you mean like company, operational, fundraising, hiring, yes. I took care of it myself. But that's actually not even business. That's just running the company. Business means actually like figuring out revenue streams and partnerships, for which we recently have one more person now.
So is it because at that time you were the best person who could take care of that side because you had CTOs and everybody else?
That's right.
You have such a good profile, a background in tech.
That's right. So we decided the split based on who was best positioned for that role at that point. Like, also it's a good skill to be able to market what exists well, and also at the same time make the right technical decisions. Like a sweet spot of, that's why I emphasize a lot on like soft skills too. It's pretty important. And for example, my CTO is way better at me at programming. I'm not bad at programming at all, but he's just way better.
Okay, that answers my question.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Arvind, Google was found here in the front row.
Oh yeah.
Google was founded in 98, and 25 years later, it is still a recognizable brand. So in the year 2048, do you expect Perplexity to still be a recognized brand? And to get there, what are things you need to do today?
I mean,
or do you even care about that idea?
I hope so, right? Obviously, why would I say no to this? But what do I need to do today for that? I think we just need to first survive for 5 to 10 years. If we get there, if we reach the 5 to 10 year mark, I think we can definitely start thinking more long term. There was like this thing I read recently that for a company, it's like half-life concept. If you survive for 1 year, you can plan for the next 1 year. If you survive for 2 years, you can plan for the next 2 years. So if you survive for 5 years or 10 years, then we can plan for the next decade itself.
Over the last year, AI has moved forward by leaps and bounds. AI tools like ChatGPT and Perplexity have become insanely good. And of course, all this has led to talk of how AI is going to steal our jobs. People bring up Terminator codes and all that stuff. And and my question is, as college students, what can we do to ensure that years down the line, when we graduate, what can we do now to ensure that we can actually add value to the world, that we cannot be replaced by $20 ChatGPT? And that's what I wanted to ask.
Okay, yeah. I would say you just, I mean, it's a good question. Number one obvious answer is use these tools yourself, make yourself more productive, be able to do a lot more things per day than people who are not using these tools. Like for example, you're writing code, like try to get the same task done in like 2 hours instead of like 8 hours. Don't debug manually, like use whatever tool you like, ChatGPT, Perplexity, Bard, and if you're a programmer, that is, or GitHub Copilot. And the other thing I would say is human judgment is still super valuable. Like these tools are great at generating content, but human taste is incredibly valuable. There's this funny video of Rick Rubin where they ask him, do you know music? Do you know any instruments? Like, do you have any technical knowledge? And he just says no. So then what are people like? Why do you even have fans? Like, why are people listening to your music? And he says, because I have incredibly good taste. And I think that'll be in fact, way more valuable than what it is today. So judgment and taste matters.
I have a small question. First I wish to congratulate you, Aravind, for whatever you're doing.
Thank you.
Great work. I've been sitting next to your professor and been hearing what work you did in the Insti, and you got 9 papers through this Insti before you left. So it is phenomenal. So congratulations. But having said this, Having said this, I see a little bit of a mixed message that you're giving to the young audience. I never seen this audience so full like this. So that is also a big sign that, you are appealing to a large, section of the, cool guys, the next generation guys of this institute. But I think there's a little bit that you have to carefully, share. See, the 80% right and getting it into the market is okay for the digital revolution. But I probably think Boeing did the same and released the Max. And I think it's a disaster. So we have to be a little careful where we apply this 80% and where we don't apply this 80%.
That's fair. So
I think this message has to be a little clear to the younger generation who may be getting influenced early in life. And, Boeing was run by engineers. If some of you read the stories, by brilliant engineers of the world. But today it's not run by engineers. It's a totally transformed organization run by marketing people who wanted to put into the market the product before it was ready.
Totally fair. So I guess the caveat to everything I said in this slides is that it applies to if you're building software products, right? Definitely, like when you're building something in the physical world, you cannot be 80% right because the mistakes are too expensive, right? Even if you're working on self-driving cars, you cannot be 80% accurate, right? The long tail matters way more there. So yeah, also that's another heuristic. If you want to work in software, pick use cases that are where the 80% accuracy is tolerable. Like it's not risky to any human life if you're 20% inaccurate to start with. And this product is one such example. In general, like most software is pretty harmless in terms of going wrong.
Hey, Aravind. I have a question. So what do you think is the bottleneck for these kinds of AI agents when it comes to hardware? Because I'm starting up right now and I want to build the Boston Dynamics of India or something like Figure Robotics.
You mean robots?
Yeah. So now that I've seen that Perplexity is tying up with Rabbit hardware device and there are such more devices like Tab. So do you think it's a bottleneck that without hardware it will not reach the masses properly, or smartphone is enough?
I mean, smartphone will definitely take us far, or even laptops for that matter. But AI native consumer devices will be like creating new experiences that were not possible before, right? Leaving aside like Rabbit or Humane or Tab, the stuff you want to work on, robots, it's actual physical labor, right? It's not possible with a Rabbit or an iPhone. So the next big thing is going to be humanoid robots, like robots in human form factor with human dexterity and like physical understanding, common sense, visual common sense. And all that is like still challenging. So what is the bottleneck? Actually, I think the bottleneck is still at an algorithmic level. Like we don't have the ChatGPT of robotics yet, right?
Yep.
So until that happens, we're not going to see them in mass market yet. And is the bottleneck in hardware? I don't think so.
Yeah.
As Tesla Optimus, as you've seen, even though it's teleoperated, the hardware looks phenomenal and like pretty close to done, right?
Yep. Thanks.
Another question here. Here.
Hello. Yeah, so ChatGPT is a product. I guess you meant GPT 3.5. Yeah, we are moving away from GPT 3.5. It's a pretty old model by now, and we have already seen through evaluations that a Llama fine-tuned version is better than that. And then if we go even further and take one of these models like Mistral and fine-tune that, it's going to be even better than Llama. So in the interest of serving users with a better model, not in the interest of moving away from OpenAI, but more in the interest of improving the product, we're moving away from 3.5. We're not moving away from 4 though, because 4 is still a better model than any Llama or Mistral fine-tuned today. So it'll still be there on the product. Yeah, on the Pro plan, yes. Not on the free plan.
Hello. Hello, Sneha.
Yeah. Can I
Yeah.
go? Yeah.
Can I go?
Yeah. So congratulations.
Thank you.
We all know that Google search engine was the 17th organization globally. You kind of made them dance today. What I really want to understand from you is, and whilst you said next 5 years is going to be very crucial to make your mark, could you tell us what are those two things that you would like to do in the next 5 years to make your mark?
Actually, it's very simple. We just need to be focusing on accuracy and speed. And this is exactly what Google did. Ignored most of the other things that you could be doing and just focus a lot on making the product faster and making the product more accurate. And if you wanted to add one more thing here, it's distribution. Just getting in the hands of as many people as possible and making them use it. And if you can nail these 3 things continuously over a sustained period of time, then you'll be very far ahead after 5 years.
Hello, sir. LLMs hallucinate a lot, right?
Hallucination?
Yeah, the current architectures,
Yeah.
they hallucinate and they can't continually learn anything. Do you think there can be new architectures that can resolve these issues? Or
Yeah, definitely. I think so. Definitely like models that can decouple memorization and reasoning will be way better than the current system for hallucinations or just saying arbitrary things. Definitely for sure, but that's more like research progress that needs to be made, right? Yeah.
Hello, sir.
Yeah, hello.
First of all, I have 2 questions to ask. I've been using Perplexity from the last 1 year, and in the beginning, I saw that you guys also provide the sources where you guys get the data. Now we have Bard also doing the same thing, and
Yeah.
we have Google Gemini in the beta phase, and you have GPT-4 also. So what do you think the competitive edge Perplexity.ai has over these all LLMs?
I believe our edge today over those other tools is the speed and accuracy. Like our default mode is like the fastest version in terms of the RAG plus LLMs, and our Copilot is the most accurate or comprehensive version. And so we offer these the best interpolation of speed and accuracy. But that said, like we will be adding a lot more into our product that makes it sufficiently differentiated from Bard and ChatGPT that we basically don't want to be the same like commoditized version. Yeah.
And one more question I have. So during October Dev Day, ChatGPT announced about their GPT Store and GPT Builder.
Yeah.
Like everyone who is using GPT-4 as subscription basis, they can make their own GPTs.
Yeah.
So how do you think that how much sustainable that thing is, and how is it going to change the whole economy of GPTs when everyone will be able to make their own GPTs on their own?
Yeah, I'm more skeptical of the GPT store. I don't think any one particular GPT is so widely useful yet that you cannot get the value out of it just through the traditional ChatGPT interface. But I believe that, like, people, if you can do more complicated things than just a system prompt, like actual, say, book tickets or something like that, then I think that can become useful. But that doesn't work yet today. So it's still not there yet. Yeah.
Thank you, miss.
Mic test. Hello. So can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Thank you for the presentation and the lecture.
Thank you.
It was nice. I'm not entirely sure if this is a very well-framed question, but there was a section on the presentation which talked about irrationality and how it helps us build conviction in the case where there are negative self-doubts or questions on what you're doing. I believe that every person does have a rational and irrational side, and whichever is in majority classifies a person as a rational and irrational thinker. So, and it's hard for rational thinkers to build startups or companies, as you said, because it's hard to ignore the consequences of these questions. So, like, if a rational person does want to be as successful or more successful and build an amazing startup, how does he convince the irrational part of his mind to take over in these times where these self-doubts and convictions prevent us from actually doing what we are supposed to do?
Yeah, I mean, I agree with you. There's nuance to saying someone is a rational person versus a rational person who's just being rational or irrational about one particular thing, right? What I meant is, if you're just rational and wanted to make a lot of money in your life, doing a startup is not the best way to go about it, right? Because it's very risky and like there's a lot of pain tolerance required. So I would say if a rational person has sufficient pain tolerance, then they can definitely like invoke the irrational part of their brain and go ahead and try to do it. Yeah.
Thank you, sir.
All right, I think that's all for the questions, but thank you so much, everybody.
Thank you, sir, for that insightful talk. Now I will invite Prof. Mahesh, Dean Alumni and Corporate Relations, and Mr. Kaviraj Nair and Professor Ravindran to please facilitate Mr. Dr. Aravind Srinivas. Ladies and gentlemen, as we bid farewell to this enriching experience, it's evident that our journey is gracefully concluded. A big thank you to Dr. Aravind Srinivas for sharing insightful experiences today. His wisdom has left a lasting impact. Thanks to our fantastic audience for making this event memorable. Cheers to new perspectives and shared moments. Thank you.